So today I want to go over how to make a professional looking graph using Excel. And so let's say you have a set of data from a seed germination experiment in which you've looked at different substrates and different lights, and you've collected a mean seed germination and then also a standard deviation. And this might be how you would present it in a paper with his mean plus or minus standard deviation. But for graphing in Excel, we'll want to separate these values. So we can set it up so that we have the substrate and the light and the dark mean and then the light and dark standard deviation. And we'll enter those in Excel. So if you've collected the data shown before in the worksheet, you'll want to open up Excel, Microsoft Excel, and to a blank worksheet. And if for some reason you don't get a blank worksheet, you can click up here to blank worksheet so that you have a blank worksheet to work with. The next step would be to enter the data from your information, in this case the seed germination data, and you'll want to enter them in separate columns. And so I've quickly entered the data here, save you the time of looking at it. And so again, I have the substrate in the column A, the mean for light in column B, dark, and then the standard deviations for these. And we'll use each of these columns separately. So to create a graph, you want to select columns A and B, go up here to Insert, one of these graphs, and we'll do the simple chart here. And so now we have a chart of the substrate. I'm just going to move it over a little bit for now. And so one of the things we'll want to do, first of all, is add axes labels. So you'll notice that we're in this design column here, and we should have add chart element, axes title. So primary, and primary is germination substrate. Make sure things are spelled correctly. Enter that. Do the same thing for the y-axis. And now I have the axes labeled. A chart title is usually not used in one for publication, although you might use it if it's in a poster or in a PowerPoint, but I'm going to make it for publication for putting in a paper, so I'm going to just delete the chart title. Excel makes these grid lines, which are sometimes helpful, but often for a professional graph you may not want them. So I'm going to go up here to Chart Elements, Grid Lines, Primary Horizontal, and turn them off. And so that will look cleaner. I can also change the size of this graph if I want it bigger, or however, if I want to change the orientation. An important aspect of a graph is if you have means, you should also have some sort of measure the variance around that. Standard deviation is the common one and the one that we have in this example here. I will click on one of the bars and that will activate them. You'll notice the little dots around them showing them activated. I will go to Chart Element, Error Bars. I want to add them, but let's do more error bar options. They'll bring up something here on the side of Format Error Bars tab. I want to use standard deviations, not 20% or some weird thing like this. I will click on Custom. That will automatically enter a value of 1, which is meaningless. I want to use standard deviation, so I need to specify the value. Click here. As I say, the default is 1, but I want to use this standard deviation, so I will select the standard deviation data. If I want negative error bars, I need to also select it for the negative ones, and I'll say OK. And so now I have error bars. I can adjust them. Do I want the error bars on both plus or minus, just minus, or just plus? For bar graphs, I often like them just plus. For line graphs, it might be both. I can have a cap on it with a little horizontal line or none. I like a cap. I can also go to this little cap here and adjust the color. If I want to make sure they're black and not gray, I can adjust the size, maybe make them slightly bigger. And then I have my error bars, and I can click back to the graph and get rid of the formatting. And so now I have error bars. I can also activate and change fonts. For instance, this is pretty small, so I can click on Germination Substrate, go home, font, let's say make it a little bit bigger, 12 point, and I want to make sure it's black and not gray, and so I can do that. Can do the same thing over here, black, a little bit larger. Can make these also slightly larger on the X and Y axes. And so I change the fonts to make them more readable. That's especially important if you're going to something like PowerPoint or a poster. At the same time, I can also click on the axes. Here the Y-axis by default is white. If I want it to be more visible, I can change the color to black. Likewise, I might want to do the same thing here for the X-axis. And so now I have that these axes are clearly visible. The other thing you'll notice is right now my percent germination goes from 0 to 120%, Excel's default. 120% germination doesn't make any sense. I might want the maximum to be 20, to be exactly 100. So I can click on that, and over here in the Format Axis options, I can change the maximum to 100%. And now that makes a little more sense. I can also go down here to tick marks, and if I want to see exactly where they are, I could do the major tick mark outside. And so then you have those little tick marks. And so you can adjust those things as well. And so now at this point, I have a nice looking graph. I can also change the colors of these bars if I wanted to. I can click on bars, go up here to the format. I can change the fill of them. Let's say I want them to be a dark green. I could change the outline. It could be a green. I could have it, let's say, a black. I could even change the shape effects, although don't get carried away with that. And so again, now I have here a nice professional graph that could be inserted someplace. Now let's consider a more complicated data set. In this case here we have substrate, but also light and dark germination. So let's highlight these three columns. Again, insert a graph, same type. Going to start by making it a little bit bigger, move it over. Again, can do different things, get rid of the chart title, add our axes titles. I can again add error bars. Again, want to do the more error bars. Okay, cancel. First of all, I want to select which ones I want. And I could have done it there too, but error bars, more error bars, comes up here. Again, custom. Have to specify value. Again, I'm going to do standard deviation. I'm not going to do the negative right now because I'm going to only display positives. And again, I'm going to then just display the positive. I can go back to make sure they're, let's say, black. And I'm going to leave the same size. Come back out of here, select the other, data, add error bars, more error bars options, specify value. Again, have to choose the standard deviations. The default of 1 is meaningless. I'm going to make him plus, and again change it to black. So now I have error bars as before. As before, let me click on my chart again. I can go back to my design, grid lines. I can remove them to make it look more professional. I can click and go back to home and make my titles, or not titles, the labels bigger for everything and black. I can also go back here and make my axes black and go over here, make my axes black. I can click on this axis here, add my tick marks outside. And so now again I have a graph that's looking pretty good. I can also change colors, going up here to format, and that's right now blue and orange. That's what they chose. I could choose whatever I want. For instance, if I'm going to print this out in a paper or something, I might want to have something that when it's printed you can easily distinguish between them, because now I have two data sets. So maybe I'm going to make the light one, a light gray, but I will put a black outline around it. And then this one here, I am going to make a black, representing the dark. The other thing that is important is now that we have two data sets, we need to distinguish them. And so there's a graph legend. By default, it's placed down here at the bottom, which I don't think is a very useful spot. So I'm going to right-click on these series. I'm going to right-click and format legend here. I don't want it at the bottom. I want it, let's say, at the right. But I can also get it where it overlaps. And so that makes more sense. And if I want, I can even move it around a bit to get it to a place that I like. The other thing I will want to do is come down here to this series. Series 1 and Series 2 is meaningless. I want more meaningful labels. So I will right-click on here, select data. For Series 1, I want to click on that and edit it. And I want the series name to be light instead of Series 1. For Series 2, I also will edit it dark. And so now it's okay. And now I have more meaningful names. If the fonts are too small, I can indeed go back to here, home, make it, let's say, a little bit bigger. Same for this one. And so now it's a little bit more readable. And now I have a professional looking graph dealing with seed germination with light and dark for different substrates, with error bars representing standard deviations. You'll notice these error bars all look different because the standard deviations are not the same for every data set. If they all look the same, there is a good likelihood that you have used the default value of 1 instead of actually gotten the standard deviation values in there. If you were to put this in a paper, obviously in the paper you would use a figure legend that would give a description of this figure. One thing I did forget to do, and so I will do it now, is get rid of the 120% because that's meaningful. So again, I can click, get onto there, format the axes, change this to 100%. And again, that looks like a more meaningful graph.